thank you for staying with us. Let's begin with one of the quotes that you saw earlier from the Minister of the Interior, Rauf Aregbesola, who said, "The self-restraint, self-denial, sacrifice, and deep spiritual consciousness that accompanied the fasting period should not end, but be maintained and improved upon in order to be a better person and true worshipper." Let's have a discussion around this in order to sustain the lessons of Ramadan with Abdulaziz Alatoye, who is National Head Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat of Nigeria, joins us virtually from Ojokoro in Lagos. Thank you for joining us this morning. Looking at that statement from the Minister of the Interior, Rauf Aregbesola, how do we sustain those lessons?
Okay, thanks very much, Ayo, and happy Salah celebration to all Muslims and non-Muslims all over Nigeria. The month of Ramadan is actually a month of training. So it is expected that when we do rehearsal, we maintain that rehearsal when we get to the football pitch, if I can liken it to that. And we have to demonstrate what we have learned in the month of Ramadan for the rest 11 months. What that means is that we should abstain from all the evil deeds, and we should imbibe all the good things we have learned in the month of Ramadan. And this is one of the reasons we thank Almighty Allah for bringing the month of Ramadan, every 12 months. So that we refresh ourselves. We have this spiritual training. It's also a moral training, as well as physical training, by abstaining from all that are evil spiritually, all that are evil morally, all that are evil physically. So this is what we have gone through for the past 1 month. And we expect that those trainings will continue for the next 11 months, when we will refresh again and try to train again for another 1 month that we will use for another 11 months. And this is the reason we always thank Almighty Allah for giving us the opportunity to train ourselves, every 1 month in every 12 calendar month. So it is a rebirth for us that we will always leave our evil ways or our wrong ways. So, and that is why sometimes it's amazing to me that people go back to what they were doing, after Ramadan. So the message of the Honorable Minister is actually very germane, that we don't go back to all those things. We should demonstrate love that we are demonstrating during Ramadan. We should demonstrate restraints that we are demonstrating during Ramadan. In Ramadan, you cannot abuse person. You cannot attack person. You cannot do any form of evil. Apart from that, you have to be very generous. You have to take care of your neighbor. You have to take care of people generally. So you do good. So if we sustain this training in the Ramadan, I believe it is going to be very beneficial to us, as a country, as well as people generally. So I absolutely agree with the statement of the Honorable Minister that Muslims should never go back to all those things that we have dropped that are not good, and we should sustain all those things that are good. Because if we look at the essence of Ramadan, that Allah gave us that commandment that we should fast and compulsorily train ourselves. It says that, you are ladina amanu, you are ladina amanu kutiba alaykum siyam kama kutiba ala ladina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. The essence of fasting, O you who believe, I have made it compulsory for you, as I made it for those who are earlier before you, so that you can be righteous, so that you can be God-fearing. A righteous person will always think right.
Well, it's a lot of work. Right, my apologies for butting in, Mr. Alatoye, but self-denial, self-restraint, it's a lot of work. And you talked about love at a time when everyone, quite a good number of people would say, I barely have enough for myself. Being able to give that same thing that I don't have to other people is tough. self-restraint in the face of provocation. One will definitely need the power beyond himself to do that, don't you think?
I absolutely agree, and that is exactly what Ramadan has done. For instance, yes, we don't have sufficiently, but by the time you fast, you have to also sacrifice. You have to pay, for example, Sadaqatul Fitri. However little it is, you must pay something for other people to also enjoy. We should remember that irrespective of how we claim not to have, some other people are not even having up to us. So we then have to make sure that we also sacrifice and contribute to the joy of others. And that is where the logo of love for all and hatred for none comes in. Now, let me come to the issue of provocation. When we are fasting now, if somebody provokes you, what do? You tell him, Anasau, I am fasting. And so therefore, I cannot engage you, in any fiscal, I cannot abuse you, I cannot attack you. The moment you tell the person that I'm fasting, then that means you are declaring peace, absolute peace. There should be no quarrel among us, there should be no abuse, there should be no verbal attack, there should be no physical attack. So this is what Ramadan has trained us in the sight of the highest provocation. And that is why when we look at one verse of the Holy Quran, and it says that, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu biru, those of you who are believers, you must be very patient. Is biru, you must be very patient. Wasabiru, warahabitu. Again, you must be patient and you must be steadfast on that act of patience. There should be no amount of provocation that will make somebody to start abusing another person or to start beating another person, which is animalistic. And this is exactly what Ramadan, has taught us. Yes, I agree with you. It's a very difficult thing. Almighty Allah also says it in the Holy Quran that وَمَا يُلَقَوْهَا إِلَّا الَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا وَمَا يُلَقَوْهَا إِلَّا ذُو حَظٍّ عَظِيمٍ. It is not possible for those who do not have, steadfastness in the act of patience. You must be very patient in this life. You see a lot of provocations, but then at the side of that provocation, you have to demonstrate maturity. You have to demonstrate stability in the act of patience. We've been in a scenario where, for instance, I give you a very live example very recently. Some people went to my land, you call them maybe a Jagumbal or whatever, with police and all the rest. And I calmed them down. I said, relax. Land belongs to Almighty Allah. There is no need for fighting, no need for quarreling. If you want to take the land, why don't you take the normal procedure? You approach me, you don't need to bring gun, you don't need to, all of them were hands down.
Indeed, Mr. Latoye, Christians, individuals, regardless of their faith, require some form of steadfastness to, abide by, those values that you talk about. And whether we're Christians or Muslims or even traditionalists, we don't have a paucity of faiths in Nigeria. We have, in fact, a surfeit of faiths in Nigeria. And, it reminds me, I'm reading from President Muhammadu Buhari's Salam message to Muslims in 2019. He says, and I quote, extremism is like cancer, which must be detected and destroyed from its early stages of growth. He goes on to say, Islam is a religion of peace, and we should avoid violent extremist ideas that give Islam a wrong name, because our conducts have more lasting positive impressions than what we say by word of mouth. So it seems that there are those who are temperate and there are those who, subscribe to some form of fanaticism. Tell us, Mr. Olatoye, what's the dividing line, if there is, between those who are temperate and those who are extreme? And perhaps you could also have admonitions at this very critical time where we need unity in the country.
Thank you very much for that citation from Mr. President, to which I 100% align. Islam is a religion of peace, and it teaches us all peace. And if we look at human value generally, which is very common to all religions, being very peaceful is a common denominator to all of us. And for the fact that Islam means peace, means that no act of violence is even allowed in Islam. The only thing allowed is the right of self-defense, which the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam demonstrated to us, and which is in our constitution, and which is generally all over the world. That is what the national law says, the right of self-defense. Beyond that, there is no room for any aggression whatsoever. There is no room for any act of terrorism, any act of extremism. But let me quickly say that the fewer people who want to use religion, to amass wealth to themselves, they have some objectives that has nothing to do with religion. There are three major of those objectives. Number one is for them to, get power to themselves, again, to acquire territories to themselves so that they can acquire wealth to themselves. If you look at these three things that they are pursuing, none of them is an Islamic pillar. Neither is it an Islamic value. Islam teaches us, not to be amassing wealth at the detriment of others. And this is what some people are doing, very small number within the Muslim group that are fanatics. So we use this opportunity of Ramadan to let them reflect again and go back to the right teaching of Islam. Because what they are doing is totally wrong, is totally unacceptable, is un-Islamic, and they are going to answer for all their acts of extremism and fanaticism. Islam, it abhors all forms of fanaticism. And Islam allows us to embrace ourselves. If you look at it during these Ramadan lectures, we've had where the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam allowed the Christians from Nigeria to come and worship inside his mosque in Medina. So how come now a Muslim will say you are attacking another Muslim, talk less of attacking Christians or attacking any other person? We are all created by Allah, and we must have respect for that Allah by not attacking any of his creatures.
Baraka de Salah Alaji Alatoye, this period after the Ramadan, you've said you called it a month of training. Now, one will begin to ask the question, beyond this training, how should the faithful begin to apply the skills acquired, the skills of self-restraint, self-denial, kindness, mercy? How would you advise they begin to apply them in everyday living?
My advice is actually that all the things we have learned, we should put them into practice, because the theoretical learning will not be sufficient. And that is why Allah introduced even the practical training. And that is why I gave some examples of if somebody, abuses you, you tell them, no, I don't fight. If we pick, for example, what is a major challenge to us in this country, like election, putting people in post and then accountability in that post and all the rest of it. This is a very great lesson for anybody going for election. We should know that it's Allah that appoints people. So allow people the free will to do what they are supposed to do. If you are choosing, go and do the work very honestly and diligently without any fraudulent intention. So these are the learnings we learn, and if we don't put it into practice, it is not useful at all. It means we haven't actually undergone that training. It is like somebody who passes through a classroom, but the classroom doesn't pass through him. You will have listened to what you are taught in the classroom, but invariably, you are not implementing it. The way it should be from the gun to town. What you learn in school, you put in practice in real life. And this is exactly what we are saying. If we don't put what we learned in the last 1 month in practice for the next 12 months, then it means it's an academic exercise. And this is one of the things that we have always been telling Muslims, that look, it is not just you learn for 1 month, you restrain for 1 month, and when that 1 month ends, and then you stop it there. We must stop all acts of violence. It is totally alien to Islam. We must love others, just like the logo of our Jamaat is love for all and hatred for none. You cannot hate any other person. It is totally unacceptable. It's practically unacceptable. You must love your wife, love your children, you love your household, you love your neighbor, you love, the women, food, children, elders. You have to love everyone.
All right.
The love that is required of us. And this is the training that I want everyone to emulate and use in our day-to-day life after this Ramadan.
Well, I sincerely hope that the lessons are sinking in even as you are speaking them. But we also have a guest right here in our Abuja studios, Mr. Kasim Akinreti, who is an adherent of Islam and former chairman, Nigerian Union of Journalists, Lagos chapter, joins us now. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and Eid Mubarak to you.
Eid Mubarak.
So let's talk about the end of Ramadan, and some of the things that, maybe non-Muslims don't know about Ramadan. We now know, I know that it's one of the 5 pillars of Islam. What more can you tell us about the significance of this month which has just come to an end?
Well, the significance of Ramadan, it's quite a lot of it. It's not about deny yourself of not eating. It goes beyond that. It's about spiritual rejuvenation, and you renew, your closeness with Almighty Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, and you're also good, virtually to everyone. So the good virtues that you exude during that month of Ramadan will have to continue through the rest of your life, not even about through the rest of the year. And if during that 30 days you are so close to God, during that 30 days you refrain from evil deeds, during that 30 days you show love to someone, during that 30 days everybody knows that there is tranquility everywhere. So what else do you want to do the rest of your life? You don't do that. You see, if you Steve Jobs, one of those multimillionaires, said when he was at the bedside that the entire life is vanity. Because what he can see now is that just looking at the grave and look at the hereafter. Everything that he has, he just have to live it. So that's part of the major lessons of Ramadan. That whatever you have, share with the people that do not have. Share joy, share love. Don't be violent with anyone. Restrain yourself from so many evil deeds. That is symbolism of Ramadan.
Can you give us a lot more, tell us a bit more about the origins of Ramadan? How did it come to be? How did Muslims get this, this season, which is now known as the holiest month in all of Islam?
Well, according to the Holy Quran, fasting has been prescribed for us so that we can be more pious. And fasting has been prescribed for us, that is prescribed for the prophets, for everyone that are common. So it started, that's one of the 5 pillars of Islam. So it started with the religion itself. So that this is the basic principles that you need to understand. Islam is based on 5 pillars, which, fasting is one of them. And fasting, salat is also there. And also knowing that Almighty Allah is one is also there. And then you also know that you're also going to go for Hajj. One step after the other. But fasting, it's also comes at the height of it, because that's the height of spirituality. If you really believes in what God has asked you to do, you must fast in that place so that you can understand something about steadfastness, fear of God, being kind to people, and these are the bases of life. So it started with Islam in the pristine time, and it has been with us all through, and it will be with us all the days of our lives, because it's one of the basic pillars of Islam that no one, who call himself a Muslim adherent will not do. And that is why, if you cannot do it, you have to feed some people.
Okay.
And, and that is why, the reason why you cannot even fast is because if you are not healthy. And so if you can't do that, because it's extremely significant That is one reason why you have to feed someone so that that person fights on your behalf. Because the gains, what you are going to, the reward you are going to get is extremely manifold. So everyone, every conscious Muslim must ensure that he fasts during the month of Ramadan.
Well, we have just finished elections. I think just before we came to Abuja studios, Alhaji Alatoye was talking about politicians and even the electorate as well, and you know how this should have rubbed off on our processes. And interestingly, we just finished supplementary elections in Adamawa, and we saw, well, not just in Adamawa, in a number of states. Yes, but you know, I think what happened in Adamawa stood out the most for a number of people. I recall that one of the people who was holding a phone, filming the wreck in Adamawa State when he was making the legal declaration, which he made, was saying that you are fasting. And
you said, fear God.
God is watching you.
Know. Honestly, it's extremely regrettable that even the person that was doing this, you know, happens to be a Muslim. And you can see that is why someone was cautioning him that, wait a minute, you are a Muslim, this is the month of Ramadan, and you are committing this atrocious sin. So on the day of Yom Kippur, on the day of judgment, how are you going to account for this? It's as simple as that. So it shows that he does not really internalize the essence of fasting at that point in time. He did not use what they call self-restraint. I think he must have forgotten that. And also forgetting that he's going to be accountable to Almighty Allah on the day of judgment. What I do, is it right or wrong?
Which is a general problem we have across the board. Absolutely. I mean, in the adherents of the two major faiths. Everyone wonders how is it that our religion robs off on our daily life. You have likened the period of Ramadan to the period of practice, you know, for training, for real life, you know. And so people wonder how is it that we're so religious, yet, you know, very little reflects in the life that we live on a daily basis. Do you really think that there is a way that we can begin to really make sure that the faith which we profess in, you know, whatever faith is, which oftentimes on the line almost of the faith will be love, you know, respect for your neighbor, love for one another, kindness, and all those kinds of things, peace. How do we make sure that it reflects in our daily lives as adherents of Islam, Christianity, you know, whatever faith it is that we profess?
The first part of call is to understand the religion itself. There are two books which are very popular, which I will refer people to. There's a book called Towards Understanding Islam. And then there is another book called Islam Response to Contemporary Issues. The first one is by Sheikh Ala Maududi. The second one is by a former head of Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat. And these two books are quite instructive about how adherents must understand their religion and know what they do. But if you don't understand what you are doing, there's a tendency for you to go back to go back to your bad ways. So if you internalize the teachings of religion, for example, the teaching of Islam, there is no way, there is no conflict. There should be any conflict in how you are going to exude yourself, how you are going to behave yourself. Repeat, because the reality of it is that when people look at you as a Muslim, as a Christian, or as another worshipper, and you are doing something contrary to the basis of that religion, they are taking aback at what is going on. And that is why this period, we call the period of spiritual rejuvenation. If you have gone through this period of 30 to 29 days to probably adhere strictly to the principles of Islam, then you understand that your lives must reflect that religion. And if you read Quran,
as we wind down here, maybe this will be your closing statement. Right. It says that religion is a personal thing, but we find ourselves in a space where you have to relate with others. Absolutely. So in rounding up, how does your personal faith, how would you work your personal faith going through this period of training? How do you take your personal decision and faith and apply it to your world around you?
It's so simple. Adhere strictly with the principles of Islam, the principles of religion. In no ramifications. There are no two ways about it. Don't say this one is good, you are taking this, you are not taking this. No. And that is why in Islam, you enter the religion, you know, wholeheartedly. There's nothing you are going to leave behind. So you must understand that you represent that particular religion in the way you behave. So when you want to do something that you think it is negative, think that, oh, I'm not only doing this on behalf of myself. I'm also doing it because I'm I belong to a particular religion. People will look at me that is it only about what that religion is all about.
Right.
So every one of us, let us continue to enjoy self-restraint, be steadfast, to be very near to God. Go back and read the Quran every now and then. Not only during the month of Ramadan. Surah Al-Baqarah, for example, divided into 3 parts. It exudes virtually everything what we should do in life.
All right, thank you very much.
So people should go back to that daily, not during the month of Ramadan. Every morning, read the Holy Quran, read the meaning, and that provides an oxygen for you to live your life daily.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kazim Akinreti, adherent of Islam and a former chairman, Nigerian Union of Journalists, Lagos chapter. We'll take you to Alhaji Alatoye for your closing statement. Alhaji.
Thank you very much, Ayo. I think the key thing we need to know is that month of fasting is not a mere ritual. It is a month of rehearsal for which we should carry those training forward in the next 11 months. And those who are fasting should not see it as a mere ritual that I was born a Muslim and I must fast. Just like the issue of the wreck being referred. Some people are fasting because they believe we are Muslim, we just have to fast. It's beyond that. They must imbibe the training of the essence of the rehearsal and training, and they must make the best use of them for the next 11 months. And they must demonstrate love, they must demonstrate patience, they must demonstrate peaceful coexistence with others. We must be very tolerant. We must avoid all forms of violence. We must avoid untruthfulness. We must avoid corruption. We must avoid embezzlement. We must avoid all acts that are unacceptable in Islam. And this is what we should continuously do on a day-to-day basis. And we should imbibe it as our way of life. This is my parting shot to all Muslims that have fasted.
Thank you very much, Alhaji Abdulaziz Alatoye, National Head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat of Nigeria. Thank you for coming on this morning.